Hello, church leaders. Jim Sheppard live from Mikasa. You can probably tell that. I'm guessing a lot of you are doing the same thing as you're watching this. We've been getting a lot of calls this week at Generis from people wanting to know about the CARES Act. It's really moved into a new level of conversation this week as Congress passed the legislation last week, and now churches are asking a lot of questions. Let me just say right off the bat, I'm not trying to give you an in-depth review with this. My friends, our friends at ECFA, Evangelical Council on Financial Accountability, they are the very best. They had a great webinar this week, 2 tax attorneys, 2 CPAs on there, and they just did a very thorough, excellent review. So if you're looking for the comprehensive resources, I know there's a lot of people writing articles about what's in the Act, and those are the guys that I would turn to for the best and probably the most objective advice on it. So go to ecfa.org. I want to just cover 2 or 3 things, kind of an overview, kind of a high view of it. Obviously, I think the thing that a lot of churches are interested in is this idea of the Payroll Protection Act. A lot of churches, with the shift, the sudden pivot to online gatherings instead of in-person gatherings, have really struggled in terms of getting their people rallied around the giving, the offerings. Some of that is real because their people have been affected. Some of it is just the failure to adapt or to get that imparted well into this online season. But offerings have dipped, and so the first reaction is, how are we going to handle payroll in this season? And what the Payroll Protection Act does potentially is to offer a little bit of relief. Now, by the way, I would say to you, you have to bear in mind that when I describe this for you, you'll understand this is just 2 months of relief that you'll get there, and I'll cover that in just a second. So, Payroll Protection Act. I have, it is obviously geared toward small businesses. There is nothing in the Act that specifically says at this point that churches would not be included, so we're assuming at this point that they would be. All the reliable experts that I've listened to have said that. The computation is fairly easy. You take your average payroll for the last 12 months and your average monthly payroll for the last 12 months, and then multiply that times 2.5, and that becomes the maximum amount that you can ask for in a loan. Now, a couple of things on that computation. In the previous 12 months, you do have to exclude all compensation over $100,000. So if somebody gets paid $125,000, then they only get included in the computation at $100,000. So you'll have to go in there and do that calculation for anybody who gets more than that. But then you can apply for 2.5 times. This is a loan guaranteed by the government. It's through the Small Business Administration. You do this at your bank, whoever you have a banking relationship. They probably can help you with that and can help you through that. So, that's the one that seems to be getting the most attention. And I'm getting a lot of questions, quite a few churches, and I understand where this question comes from. And the question is, should we take out a loan in this season? These would be probably churches that would be debt averse, would not be churches that would be thinking about doing something like that. Other churches would not have the question, but the question is being asked. And so, the question is about a loan. So this is guaranteed by the federal government. So it is fully collateralized by them. You don't have to collateralize it. It's not unsecured technically. Because the government is going to secure that as long as you retain payroll. Now, I'll go over that in just a second. Of course, our friends at ECFA have got better guidance and much more detailed guidance on that. But as long as you maintain the payroll, your head count through June the 30th, it would all be forgiven. So if you were to get the loan, and let's just say you call it a loan, then the question you have to wrestle with is it okay for us to take out a loan in this season? Now, many churches will wrestle with that, and godly leaders will come down on both sides of that. I have no question about that. Already with just the idea of borrowing on your church facilities, you get different people who come to different conclusions about that. Totally understand that. So you'll need to wrestle with that. But then I think there's a second question is, I just wonder if it's even a loan in the first place. And here's why. If you take it out and if you maintain your head count through June 30th and it becomes 100% forgiven by the government, then that's not technically a loan. That's probably more like a grant from the government. And so the question here is, should you accept government assistance in this season? Again, I think it's a question to be wrestled with. I'm not trying to present to you what the answer is or isn't. I know that godly leaders will come down on both sides of the question there, have no doubt about that, and that's okay. But I think it is important to wrestle with the question. I would add this. If you get through the idea of, hey, we think it's okay to take out a loan, and or you go through the question of, hey, it's not really a loan, but it's more like a government grant and disaster relief and that kind of thing, and you decide, just remember, you're at risk to the extent that you don't maintain payroll. So I think you need to think through that, because I suspect as we think through the new normal, as we get back into gatherings, I think our staffing models are going to be changing. I'm not saying necessarily they'll be leaner. They might not, but I would encourage you to think through your staffing model, because if you don't maintain payroll, then it's not 100% forgiven. And again, you can look at the ECFA website and see the details there. They can explain to you how much is or isn't forgiven under that circumstance. So the Payroll Protection Act seems to be getting the most attention right now. Now, the other piece I think that's in there that a lot of churches have not highlighted at this point in time, because it doesn't seem like it's really in play. I think it will be in play in third and fourth quarter of this year as we begin to bounce back from this. And that is the idea that the government is raising from 60% to 100% the amount that a taxpayer can deduct for charitable deductions in 2020 only. So in other words, you can now take up to 100% of adjusted gross income as a charitable deduction in 2020. Obviously, not everybody can take advantage of that. Not everyone has the cash to be able to give, up to the level of their AGI in 2020. I understand that. But for certain donors who do have the capacity to do that, they might be in a position to help your church out more than they would have otherwise. And so maybe not so much right now, but later on, I think there is an opportunity for us to talk about that and speak into that as the opportunity arises for giving to rebound in this season. So just a couple of highlights there. I'm not trying to really present any definitive answers. I did want to raise the two questions under the Payroll Protection Act. I think churches will need to wrestle with one or the other, maybe even both of those questions, before deciding to do it. And importantly, before you decide to accept this loan and or grant, evaluate where you think your staffing model is going to be, because if you think you're going to make significant cuts between now and June 30th, this loan or grant, as you might want to call it, might not be for you, because you'd be exposed for some level of that as not being forgiven. Okay, hope this is helpful for you. I know there's a lot of information around. By the way, for those of you churches who do apply and go to your bank, one of the things that they pointed out on the ECFA webinar the other day is not all banks have the same interpretation of what's being said here. Some banks are actually interpreting that churches are not eligible. Press on. There's good reason to believe that churches are eligible. You're going to want to get yourself in the line. There's probably not enough money to go around to all the people who apply here. So go ahead and reserve your place in the queue, and then you can decide later what to do about that. So just a word there on that. You might get conflicting information at your bank. Consult with your CPA, consult with your tax attorney, whoever else gives you good guidance there, and they'll probably help you through that. So hope this is helpful. CARES Act, very unusual provision by our government to provide assistance primarily to small businesses, but might also apply to churches. Might be for you, might not be for you, but wanted to help you kind of walk through that decision. God bless you guys as you lead. We here at Generis are here for you. Generis.com/COVID-19, our resource site. We've got a free hotline, complimentary consultation to anyone who wants that. Just let us know, and we'll get one of our team members on the phone there with you. Hey guys, this is going to pass. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. God bless you.